Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Commish Orr, and welcome back to something I like to call Stories from the Maelstrom, a recap of the day's games for this past week of real time. One of the most incredible pitchers' duels, probably in baseball history. Um, we'll get to that in a minute. Definitely in this league for sure, but it would rank right up there in baseball history, and we'll get to that one in a minute here. But first, we head over to Detroit as the Boston Splinters were facing off against the Detroit Rockets. Boston held a half game lead in the American League heading into this one, but they would fall to Detroit in this one as the Rockets continue to find ways to win. Boston actually got in front first, 2-0 there in the fourth inning, thanks to a couple of RBI singles. The Carlton Fisk was actually injured on a foul tip in the very first inning. Biz Mackey came in to replace him and actually did pretty well. Went 3 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs scored. He actually had the first RBI for the Splinters there in the fourth inning. And then Harmon Killebrew had another RBI single to put them up 2-0 against Brett Saberhagen. Pedro Martinez pitching for Boston in this one. He's been pretty much lights out, but and he was fairly lights out through the first 4 innings at least. And then in the fifth, he ran into a little bit of trouble with 2 outs as Bill Freehan and Lou Whitaker led off with singles. He walked Kenny Lofton, and then Ichiro Suzuki, who was 0 for 2 heading into this at bat, looking to continue his 20-game hit streak, had a single there to drive in 2 runs to tie the game, and then Alex Rodriguez followed with another RBI single to put the Rockets ahead 3-2. So Ichiro extends that hitting streak to 20 games, the longest streak in the league this year, and Boston came right back in the 6th inning as Ricky Henderson drove in 2 runs with a 2-out double there to retake the lead 4-3. But Detroit came right back in the 7th. Pedro Martinez doesn't really have a lot of stamina, being a more modern pitcher. Was left the game after 6 innings. And Dennis Eckersley, who's definitely struggled for Boston, had another chance here and immediately blew the lead that they had, the 4-3 lead that they had. Alex Rodriguez had his second RBI single of the game, driving in Kenny Lofton there to tie the game back up to 4. Then in the bottom of the 8th, Eckersley's still in. He walked Charlie Blackwell to lead off that inning. But then with 2 outs, walked Lou Whitaker, and then Kenny Lofton had hit a double to score 2 runs there, driving in both Blackwell and Whitaker to put Detroit up 6-4. Tom Henke came in to close things out for Detroit. He did allow a home run to Ted Williams to cut that lead to 6-5, but that was all Boston could get. And so Detroit takes this one 6-5. Eckersley gets the blown save and the loss. His ERA is a hefty 11.69. Saberhagen gets the win. He's 6-2 at this point. And as I said, Ichiro only had the 1 hit. He was 1 for 5, but that's enough to continue that hitting streak. And with the win, Detroit pulls into first place in the American League, half a game up on the Boston Splinters. Heading over to Chicago as the Los Angeles Dynamos facing off against the Chicago Docks. And the Dynamos are in second place here, so we head over to Chicago, and we see the Docks. Barry Bonds led off the scoring for Chicago there in the first inning with a solo shot against Don Drysdale. Don Drysdale facing off against Rick Rushell. But in the top of the third, Los Angeles would get 3 runs, a couple of singles, well, 5 singles actually total in that inning to score 3 runs. to put them up 3-1. Chicago would get one of those runs back in the bottom of the fourth. Jeff Kent had an RBI single there, cutting that lead to 3-2, and then they would tie it with Barry Bonds' second homer of the game, another solo shot in the sixth. So with things all tied up at 3, heading to the top of the eighth, the Docs turned things over to Roy Oswalt to hopefully keep them in this. But it only took a few hitters before LA was able to retake the lead, as Tony Perez had a 2-run homer there in the 8th inning. Drysdale came out of the game and Trevor Hoffman came in, and despite having the bases loaded there, Sammy Sosa came up to pinch hit with the bases loaded and 2 out, but he grounded out to end the threat and end the inning there in the 8th. So LA took a 5-3 lead into the 9th inning, and they're in the bottom of the 9th. Keith Hernandez led off with the homer to cut that lead to 5-4, but that is all they could get against Trevor Hoffman. So LA takes this one. They improved to 19-14 and continue to cut the lead that the Wizards have in the National League. This is the 4th straight win for the Dynamos. I believe they won 8 of their last 10. Chicago falls to 11-22, the worst record in the Maelstrom. Joe Morgan came into this game with an 18-game hitting streak, but he went over 5 to end that streak with a strikeout, and he grounded into a double play there. So, heading over to New York, where the Oakland Jacks face off against the New York Swats. And this was a pitcher's duel. Not the one I'm talking about, but it is a pitcher's duel nonetheless, as Jack Morris was facing off against Hal Newhouser. Both pitchers going deep into this game. Jack Morris, or I should say, Hal Newhouser allowed 1 run in the first inning. Joe DiMaggio had an RBI single there, but then he was cruising the rest of the way. Meanwhile, Jack Morris was holding the Swats scoreless himself. And then in the bottom of the 8th, as he started to tire a little bit, what did he have? A 2, 3, a 4 hitter going into the bottom of the 8th here, all singles. But Roberto Alomar led off the single, and then Ty Cobb hit an RBI triple to score Alomar. He would actually get thrown out there. Yogi Berra hit a shallow fly out to right. And then Wade Boggs grounded out to second. The infield was in, though, and they caught Ty Cobb at home for the second out. And so they were able to escape with just that 1 run, but that tied the game up at 1-1. Newhouser came back out in the 9th and pitched a 1-2-3 inning. And so Oakland, with Jack Morris tiring a little bit, turns things over to Bullet Rogan. And he was not able to maintain the tie, as Griffey gets on base with a single, moves over to second on the grounder to Jimmy Fox grounder. Things were extended a little bit when Robin Yount made an error to kind of extend things there, put runners on first and third, and then Roberto Alomar RBI single to win the game. So Alomar coming in clutch with a couple of key hits there. One in the 8th, the single in the 8th that he ends up scoring on the Ty Cobb triple, and then the clutch RBI single in the 9th to win the game 2-1 for the Swats. Newhouser goes the distance in this one, allowing only 5 hits. He's 4-2. And New York, with the worst record in the American League, improved in this one at 14-19 to close the distance on the Jacks, who have the second worst record. But now let's turn things over to the incredible pitchers duel that took place in St. Louis between the Houston Hoots and the St. Louis Wizards. Facing off was Juan Marichal against Tom Seaver. So it had the pitchers that could have been able to put a pitchers duel together like this. But of course, we have to see what really happened when they took the mound. And both of them were simply incredible. Both of them through 9 innings. We had a scoreless tie through 9 innings. And they continued to pitch out into the 10th and the 11th. Things were scoreless until the top of the 12th, with both of them still in the game. Now, I did check out their actual usage that particular year in question. And in 1969, Juan Marichal had a game where he pitched 13 innings. So I didn't think it very unreasonable for him to keep going out there. Meanwhile, Tom Seaver himself had a couple of 11-inning games that year in 1973, I believe, is the year he's carded for here. And so he had a couple of 11-inning games. I was planning on having him pitch 11 innings and coming out of the game anyway. And so finally, in the top of the 12th, the Houston Hoots are able to get to Marichal a little bit. Marichal only allowed a couple of hits through the first 9 innings. 2 hits, I believe, 2 singles. And he didn't walk any, so not a lot of base runners. As you can see, he retired the first 10 batters before Jeff Bagwell's single here. Then Gary Carter hit a single here in the 5th, but then after that, he retired, other than this error here. Nobody was getting on base through the 9th. He allowed another single in the 10th to Ryan Sandberg, another single to Willie Stargell in the 11th. Finally, in the 12th, Duke Snider hit a single with 1 out, and Ryan Sandberg lined one into the gap, scoring Duke Snider for the only run of the game with that RBI double. Marichal would bounce back to get the next 2 batters out, but the damage was already done. Seaver came out of the game for Lee Smith, who actually made things a little interesting there. When Ron Santos singled with 1 out, Rogers Hornsby struck out, and then Ozzie Smith actually came out. Chipper Jones was pinch hitting for Ozzie Smith and hit a 2-base single, a single that advanced Santo 2 bases to third. So with runners on the corners and 2 out, but then Oscar Charleston grounded out to short to end the game. So Seaver goes 11 innings, allows just 6 hits. He did walk 5, though, so definitely more base runners there for St. Louis, but they just couldn't convert any of them. He was in a little bit of trouble a couple of times in this game. In the 4th inning here, he had the bases loaded with 1 out, but struck out Cepeda and then got Ted Simmons to fly out to end that inning. And then in the 6th, Tony Gwynn led off with a walk. Larry Walker followed with a single. But again, they couldn't get things done. There was a sharp grounder to third the single was 2-base single here. So Gwynn was on third. It was first and third with no outs. Then Stan Musial hits a sharp grounder to third. Mike Schmidt, who's known for good defense there, gobbled that one up, and Tony Gwynn was already off the base too far. And so they got him at the plate for the first out. And then Orlando Cepeda hit another sharp grounder to third, and Schmidt was able to step on third and throw over first for the inning-ending double play. So again, a couple of times there they had a chance to do something, runners in scoring position, but they just couldn't get it done. So again, very incredible pitchers duel here. Both starters went at least 11 innings. And finally, this one ended in the 12th, 1-0. A total of 14 hits in this game from both teams. So Marichal gets the tough luck loss. He's 3-3. But nothing to be ashamed of here in that performance. Seaver, 11 scoreless innings here. He improves to 4-2. And again, St. Louis continues to slide. They're 22-11. At one time, they had such a large lead that it was kind of getting out of hand. I didn't think anybody could catch them, but now with this loss, I believe, if we look over at the standings, LA is just 3 games back now from St. Louis. St. Louis has lost 3 straight. LA's won 4 straight, And so they've cut 4 games off of the St. Louis lead here in the last 10 games. So things are definitely tightening up there. We can see Detroit, as I said before, is half a game up on Boston. So the American League is a very tight race, only 5 games separating first and last place here. In the National League, there's a little bit more distance. LA and St. Louis, both with winning records, and Houston and Chicago, both on the losing side of things. So unless somebody turns something around here, it's going to be pretty tough. There's still a lot of season left, though, so anything could happen. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing about that. Was very. It's always great to have a game like this that you're playing out come up, because it's just crazy when things kind of match what's happened in real life. Of course, Juan Marichal, I looked it up. He had that 16-inning game against Warren Spahn, I believe. Yeah, Warren Spahn and Juan Marichal had that 16-inning game where both of them went the distance in real life. And so pretty amazing to see something like this here in my league as well. If you want to follow along with this kind of stuff, head over to baseballmaelstrom.com. You can check out all the stats, the standings, and all of that fun stuff. That's where we will end things. Thank you so much for listening in, and until next time, have a great evening.